Welcome to Happy Story Time. We're going to be reading a story, but first we're going to be reading the Bible. 1 second. And then we're going to be doing the synopsis, and then we're going to be reading Little Women. I hope you guys enjoy. Make sure to like button, subscribe, and hit the bell and lemons of the video. The Bible guy's here to read the Bible. Don't hit me with the Bible because I'm about to leave.
Hi there! I am here, and we are going to read Matthew 27. We have 2 more times with you on Little Women and 2 more times on the book of Matthew. So I hope that you're enjoying this. I know I am. I know our family is. This has become one of my great faves right here. All right, so we're on Matthew 27. Yesterday we started the story of the crucifixion. Today we're going to finish the story of the crucifixion. And that is all that we're going to be reading. So this is Matthew 27, the English Standard Version. Let me begin. Let me begin right after I do this, because I always forget. And then, there we go. Now let me begin. When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And they bound him and led him away and delivered him over to Pilate, the governor. Then when Judas, the betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. They said, What is that to us? See to it yourself. And throwing down the pieces of silver into the temple, he departed, and he went and hanged himself. But the chief priests, taking the pieces of silver, said, It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, since it is blood money. So they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field as a burial place for strangers. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, saying, And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him on whom a price had been set by some of the sons of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field as the Lord directed me. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, Are you the king of the Jews? Jesus said, You have said so. But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate said to him, Do you not hear how many things they testify against you? But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now at the feast the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd any one prisoner whom they wanted, and they had then a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they had gathered, Pilate said to them, Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ? For he knew that it was out of envy that they had delivered him up. Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him today in a dream. Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor again said to them, Which of the 2 do you want me to release for you? And they said, Barabbas. Pilate said to them, Then what shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ? They all said, Let him be crucified. And he said, Why? What evil has he done? But they shouted all the more, Let him be crucified. So when Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves. And all the people answered, His blood be on us and on our children. Then he released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, delivered him to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole battalion before him, and they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and put a reed in his right hand, and kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! And they spit on him, and took the reed, and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the robe, and put his own clothes on him, and led him away to crucify him. As they went out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. They compelled this man to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his garments among them by casting lots. Then they sat down and kept watch over him there, and over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." So also the chief priests with the scribes and elders mocked him, saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he desires him. For he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" And the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," that is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And some of the bystanders hearing it said, "This man is calling Elijah." And one of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice, and yielded up his spirit. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook, and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. When the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were filled with awe and said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." There were also many women there looking on from a distance who had followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, among whom were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea, named Joseph, who also was a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it be given to him, and Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen shroud, and laid it on his own new tomb, which he had cut in the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the tomb. The next day, that is, after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, "Sir, we remember how that impostor said while he was still alive, 'After 3 days I will rise.' Therefore order the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples go and steal him away and tell the people he has risen from the dead. And the last fraud will be worse than the first." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard of soldiers. Go make it as secure as you can." So they went and made the tomb secure by sealing the stone and setting a guard. And that is the end of Matthew chapter 27. We have just a very little tiny bit left in the book of Matthew. So we will save that for next time. So now we're reading Little Women. And in the last chapter, there was just a cacophony of mayhem that was going on as soon as Lawrence walked into the house, and they just couldn't stand each other. He and Joe were basically getting in a fight, and there were fists involved, and and toenails? Here's Kimberly to say how it really happened.
Tall Tales, Mom? So, yeah, that makes sense. So, it was Joe's birthday, and when she saw Lori, she thought she'd seen a ghost. She was like, okay, I'm seeing things. And he goes over and hugs her, and then she's like, oh my gosh, Lori and Amy must be back. And it turns out that they got married. Yay? And, like, without even telling him, because they wanted it to be a surprise. So, then what happened after that was they had a party for a while, and Joe kind of felt a little bit left out, because everybody was talking to everybody else, and then Mr. Bear came over for her birthday. And then everybody loved Mr. Bear, even Lori, who was a little bit skeptical at first. And, let's see, is there anything else that I'm forgetting? There might be. Yeah, I said that. I wouldn't skip that part.
Yeah.
That was basically the first chapter, or the second chapter. The first chapter was when Joe was...
Yeah, Joe was learning to
live again after Beth had passed away.
Learning to live the way that Beth told her she should.
And she also helped the family a lot.
Yeah.
Yep. Very helpful. Which is what we all need to be, is helpful for the family. Right? Yay! Okay, so we're on chapter 21, which is called My Lord and My Lady, which I can only imagine who that must be about. But let us go ahead and get started in reading this, and here we go. Please, Madam Mother, could you lend me pay wife for half an hour? The luggage has come, and I've been making hay of Amy's Paris finery, trying to find some things I want, said Laurie, coming in the next day to find Mrs. Lawrence sitting in her mother's lap as if being made the baby again. Certainly, go. I forget that you have any home but this, and Mrs. March pressed the white hand that wore the wedding ring, as if asking pardon for her maternal covetousness. I shouldn't have come over if I could have helped it, but I can't get on without my little woman any more than a weathercock can without wind, suggested Joe as he paused for a smile. Joe had grown quite her own saucy self again since Teddy came home. Exactly, for Amy keeps me pointing due west most of the time, with only an occasional whiffle round to the south, and I haven't had the easterly spell since I was married. Don't know anything about the north, but I'm altogether salubrious and balmy. Hey, my lady. Lovely weather so far. I don't know how long it will last, but I'm not afraid of storms, for I'm learning how to sail my ship. Come home, dear, and I'll find you a bootjack. I suppose that's what you're rummaging after among my things. Men are so helpless, Mother, said Amy with a matronly air, which delighted her husband. What are you going to do with yourself after you get settled? Asked Joe, buttoning Amy's cloak as she used to button her pinafores. We have our plans. We don't mean to say much about them yet, because we are such very new brooms, but we don't intend to be idle. I'm going into business with a devotion that shall delight Grandpa and prove to him that I'm not spoilt. I need something of the sort to keep me steady. I'm tired of dawdling and mean to work like a man. And Amy, what is she going to do? Asked Mrs. March, well pleased at Laurie's decision and the energy with which he spoke. After doing the civil all round and airing our best bonnets, we shall astonish you by the elegant hospitalities of our mansion, the brilliant society we shall draw about us. Since it's the elegant mansion, it must have a fountain. That is what we know about it. And the beneficial influence we shall exert over the world at large. That's about it, isn't it, Madame Rachamier? Asked Laurie, with a quizzical look at Amy. Time will show. Come away, impertinence, and and don't shock my family by calling me names before their faces," answered Amy, resolving that there should be a home with a good wife in it before she set up a salon as a queen of society. "How happy those children seem together," observed Mr. March, finding it difficult to become absorbed in his Aristotle after the young couple had gone. "Yes, and I think it will last," added Mrs. March, with the restful expression of a pilot who had brought a ship safely into port. "I know it will. Happy Amy!" And Joe sighed, then smiled brightly as Professor Bayer opened the gate with an impatient push. Later in the evening, when his mind had been set at rest about the bootjack, Laurie said suddenly to his wife, who was flitting about arranging her new art treasures, "Mrs. Lawrence, my lord, that man intends to marry our Joe." "I hope so, don't you, dear?" "Well, my love, I consider him a trump, in the fullest sense of that expressive word, but I do wish he was a little younger and a good deal richer. Now, Laurie, don't be too fastidious and worldly-minded. If they love one another, it doesn't matter a particle how old they are, nor how poor. Women never should marry for money." Amy caught herself up short as the words escaped her, and looked at her husband, who replied with a malicious gravity, "Certainly not, though you do hear charming girls say that they intend to do it sometimes. If my memory serves me, you at once thought it your duty to make a rich match. That accounts, perhaps, for your marrying a good-for-nothing like me." "Oh, my dearest boy, don't say that. I forgot you were rich when I said yes. I'd have married you if I hadn't a penny, and I sometimes wish you were poor, that I might show how much I love you." And Amy, who was very dignified in public and very fond in private, gave convincing proofs of the truth of her words. "You really don't think I am such a mercenary creature as I tried to be once, do you? I would break your heart if you didn't believe that I'd gladly pull in the same boat with you, even if you had to get your living by rowing on the lake. Am I an idiot and a brute? How could I think so when you refused a richer man for me, and won't let me give you half I want to now, when I have the right? Girls do it every day, poor things, and are taught to think it is their only salvation. But you had better lessons, and though I trembled for you at one time, I was not disappointed, for the daughter was true to the mother's teaching. I told Mamma that so yesterday, and she looked as glad and grateful as if I'd given her a check for $1 million to be spent in charity. You are not listening to my moral remarks, Mrs. Lawrence." And Laurie paused, for Amy's eyes had an absent look, though fixed upon his face. "Yes, I am, and admiring the dimple in your chin at the same time. I don't wish to make you vain, but I must confess that I'm prouder of my handsome husband than of all his money. Don't laugh, but your nose is such a comfort to me." And Amy softly caressed the well-cut feature with artistic satisfaction. Laurie had received many compliments in his life, but never one that suited him better, as he plainly showed, though he did laugh at his wife's peculiar taste, while she said slowly, "May I ask you a question, dear?" "Of course you may." "Shall you care if Joe does marry Mr. Bayer?" "Oh, that's the trouble, is it? I thought there was something in the dimple that didn't suit you, not being a dog in the manger, but the happiest fellow alive. I assure you I can dance at Joe's wedding with a heart as light as my heels. Do you doubt it, ma amie?" Amy looked up at him and was satisfied. Her last little jealous fear vanished forever, and she thanked him with a face full of love and confidence. "I wish we could do something for that capital old professor. Couldn't we invent a rich relation who shall obligingly die out there in Germany and leave him a tidy little fortune?" said Laurie, when they began to pace up and down the long drawing-room, arm in arm, as they were fond of doing, in memory of the Chateau Jardin. "Joe would find us out and spoil it all. She is very proud of him, just as he is, and said yesterday that she thought poverty was a beautiful thing. Bless her dear heart. She won't think so when she has a literary husband and a dozen little professors and professorians to support. We won't interfere now, but watch our chance and do them a good turn in spite of themselves. I owe Joe for a part of my education, and she believes in people's paying their honest debts. So I'll get round her in that way. How delightful it is to be able to help others, isn't it? That was always one of my dreams, to have the power of giving freely, and thanks to you, the dream has come true. Ah, we'll do lots of good, won't we? There's one sort of poverty that I particularly like to help. Out-and-out beggars get taken care of, but poor gentlefolks fare badly because they won't ask, and people don't dare to offer charity, yet there are 1,000 ways of helping them, if one only knows how to do it so delicately that it won't offend. I must say I'd like to serve a decayed gentleman better than a blarneying beggar. I suppose it's wrong, but I do, though it is harder. Because it takes a gentleman to do it, added the other member of the Domestic Admiration Society. Thank you. I'm afraid I don't deserve that pretty compliment, but I was going to say that while I was dawdling about abroad, I saw a good many talented young fellows making all sorts of sacrifices and enduring real hardships that they might realize their dreams. Splendid fellows, some of them, working like heroes, poor and friendless, but so full of courage, patience, and ambition that I was ashamed of myself and longed to give them a right good lift. Those are people whom it's a satisfaction to help, for if they've not genius, it's an honor to be allowed to serve them, and not let it be lost or delayed for want of fuel to keep the pot boiling. If they haven't, it's a pleasure to comfort the poor souls and keep them from despair when they find it out. Yes, indeed. And there's another class who can't ask, and who suffer in silence. I know something of it, for I belonged to it before you made a princess of me, as the king does the beggar maid of the old story. Ambitious girls have a hard time, Laurie, and often have to see youth, health, and precious opportunities go by, just for want of a little help at the right minute. People have been very kind to me, and whenever I see girls struggling along as we used to do, I want to put out my hand and help them as I was helped. And so you shall, like an angel as you are, cried Laurie, resolving with a glow of philanthropic zeal to found and endow an institution for the express benefit of young women with artistic tendencies. Rich people have no right to sit down and enjoy themselves, or let their money accumulate for others to waste. It's not half so sensible to leave a lot of legacies when one dies, as it is to use the money wisely while alive and enjoy making one's fellow creatures happy with it. We'll have a good time ourselves and add an extra relish to our own pleasures by giving other people a generous taste. Will you be a little Dorcas, going about emptying a big basket of comforts and filling it up with good deeds? With all my heart, if you will be a brave St. Martin, stopping as you ride gallantly through the world to share your cloak with the beggar. It's a bargain, and we shall get the best of it. So the young pair shook hands upon it, and then paced happily on again, feeling that their pleasant home was more homelike, because they hoped to brighten other homes, believing that their own feet would walk more uprightly along the flowery path before them, if they smothered rough ways for other feet, and feeling that their hearts were more closely knit together by a love which could tenderly remember those less blessed than they. That is the end of chapter 21. And now we have chapter 22. I told you this is going to be a short reading day. So this is chapter 22, which is called Daisy and Demi. Here we go. I cannot feel that I have done my duty as humble historian of the March family without devoting at least one chapter to the two most precious and important members of it. Daisy and Demi had now arrived at years of discretion, for in this fast age babies of 3 or 4 assert their rights, and get them too, which is more than many of their elders do. If there ever were a pair of twins in danger of being utterly spoilt by adoration, it was these prattling brooks. Of course, they were the most remarkable children ever born, as will be shown when I mention that they walked at 8 months, talked fluently at 12 months, and at 2 years they took their places at table, and behaved with a propriety which charmed all beholders. At 3, Daisy demanded a needler, and actually made a bag with 4 stitches in it. She likewise set up housekeeping in the sideboard, and managed a microscopic cooking stove with a skill that brought tears of pride to Hannah's eyes, while Demi learned his letters with his grandfather, who invented a new mode of teaching the alphabet by forming the letters with his arms and legs, thus uniting gymnastics for head and heels. The boy early developed a mechanical genius which delighted his father and distracted his mother, for he tried to imitate every machine he saw, and kept the nursery in a chaotic condition, with a sewing machine, a mysterious structure of string, chairs, clothespins, and spools, for wheels to go wound and wound, also a basket hung over the back of a big chair, in which he vainly tried to hoist his too confiding sister, who with feminine devotion allowed her little head to be bumped till rescued, when the young inventor indignantly remarked, "Why, Marmar, dat's mine lily waiter, and me's trying to pull her up." Though utterly unlike in character, the twins got on remarkably well together, and seldom quarreled more than thrice a day. Of course, Demi tyrannized over Daisy, and gallantly defended her from every other aggressor, while Daisy made a galley slave of herself, and adored her brother as the one perfect thing in the world. A rosy, chubby, sunshiny little soul was Daisy, who found her way to everybody's heart, and nestled there, one of the captivating children who seem made to be kissed and cuddled, adorned and adored, like little goddesses, and produced for general above on all festive occasions. Her small virtues were so sweet that she would have been quite angelic if a few small naughtinesses had not kept her delightfully human. It was all fair weather in her world, and every morning she scrambled up to the window in her little nightgown to look out and say, no matter whether it rained or shone, "Oh, pity day, oh, pity day." Everyone was a friend, and she offered kisses to a stranger so confidingly that the most inveterate bachelor relented, and baby lovers became faithful worshippers. "Me loves everybody," she once said, opening her arms with her spoon in one hand and her mug in the other, as if eager to embrace and nourish the whole world. As she grew, her mother began to feel that the dovecote would be blessed by the presence of an inmate as serene and loving as that which had helped to make the old house home, and to pray that she might be spared a loss like that which had lately taught them how long they had entertained an angel unawares. Her grandfather often called her Beth, and her grandmother watched over her with untiring devotion, as if trying to atone for some past mistake which no eye but her own could see. Demi, like a true Yankee, was of an inquiring turn, wanting to know everything, and often getting much disturbed because he could not get satisfactory answers to his perpetual "What for?" He also possessed a philosophic bent, to the great delight of his grandfather, who used to hold Socratic conversations with him, in which the precocious pupil occasionally posed his teacher, to the undisguised satisfaction of the womenfolk. "What makes my legs go, Drampa?" asked the young philosopher, surveying those active portions of his frame with a meditative air, while resting after a go-to-bed frolic one night. "It's your little mind, Demi," replied the sage, stroking the yellow head respectfully. "What is a little mind?" "It is something which makes your body move, as the spring made the wheels go in my watch when I showed it to you." "Open me! I want to see it go wound." "I can't do that any more than you could open the watch. God winds you up, and you go till he stops you." "Does I?" And Demi's brown eyes grew big and bright, and he took in the new thought. "Is I wounded up like the watch?" "Yes, but I can't show you how, for it's done when we don't see." Demi felt his back as if expecting to find it like that of the watch, and then gravely remarked, "I dess Dodd does it when as asleep." A careful explanation followed, to which he listened so attentively that his anxious grandmother said, "My dear, do you think it wise to talk about such things to that baby? He's getting great bumps over his eyes and learning to ask the most unanswerable questions." If he is old enough to ask the questions, he is old enough to receive true answers. I am not putting the thoughts into his head, but helping him unfold these already there. These children are wiser than we are, and I have no doubt the boy understands every word I have said to him. Now, Demi, tell me, where do you keep your mind? If the boy had replied like Alcibiades, "By the gods, Socrates, I cannot tell," his grandfather would not have been surprised. But when, after standing a moment on one leg, like a meditative young stork, he answered, in a tone of calm conviction, "In my little belly," the old gentleman could only join in Grandma's laugh and dismiss the class in metaphysics. There might have been cause for maternal anxiety if Demi had not given convincing proofs that he was a true boy, as well as a budding philosopher, for often after a discussion which caused Aunt Hannah to prophesy, with ominous nods, "That child ain't long for this world," he would turn about and set her fears at rest by some of the pranks with which her dear, dirty, naughty little rascals distraught and delight their parents' souls. Meg made many moral rules and tried to keep them, but what mother was ever proof against the winning wiles, the ingenious evasions, or the tranquil audacity of the miniature men and women who so early show themselves accomplished artful dodgers? "No more raisins, Demi, they'll make you sick," says Mamma to the young person who offers his services in the kitchen with unfailing regularity on plum pudding day. "Me likes to be sick. I don't want to have you, so run away and help Daisy make patty cakes." He reluctantly departs, but his wrongs weigh upon his spirit, and by, when an opportunity comes to redress them, he outwits Mamma by a shrewd bargain. "So you have been good children, and I'll play anything you like," says Meg, as she leads her assistant cook upstairs when the pudding is safely bouncing in the pot. "Truly, Marmar?" asked Demi, with a brilliant idea in his well-powdered head. "Yes, truly. Anything you say," replies the short-sighted parent, preparing herself to sing The Three Little Kittens half a dozen times over, or to take her family to buy a penny bun, regardless of wind or limb. But Demi corners her by the cool reply, "Then can I play switch?" It's actually not in there. Okay.
Dad.
"Then we'll go and eat up all the raisins." There it is.
I like
Aunt Dodo was chief playmate and confidant of both children, and the trio turned the little house topsy-turvy. Aunt Amy was as yet only a name to them. Aunt Beth soon faded into a pleasantly vague memory, but Aunt Dodo was a living reality, and they made the most of her, for which compliment she was deeply grateful. But when Mr. Bayer came, Jo neglected her playfellows, and dismay and desolation fell upon their little souls. Daisy, who was fond of going about peddling kisses, lost her best customer and became bankrupt. Demi, with infantile penetration, soon discovered that Dodo liked to play with the bear man better than she did with him. But, though hurt, he concealed his anguish, for he hadn't the heart to insult a rival who kept a mine of chocolate drops in his waistcoat pocket, and a watch that could be taken out of its case and freely shaken by ardent admirers. Some persons might have considered these pleasing liberties as bribes, but Demi didn't see it in that light, and continued to patronize the bear man with pensive affability, while Daisy bestowed her small affections upon him at the third call, and considered his shoulder her throne, his arm her refuge, his gifts treasures of surpassing worth. Gentlemen are sometimes seized with sudden fits of admiration for the young relatives of ladies whom they honor with their regard, but this counterfeit philoprogenitiveness sits uneasily upon them and does not deceive anybody a particle. Mr. Bayer's devotion was sincere, however likewise effective, for honesty is the best policy in love as in law. He was one of the men who are at home with children, and looked particularly well when little faces made a pleasant contrast with his manly one. His business, whatever it was, detained him from day to day, but evenings seldom failed to bring him out to see. Well, he always asked for Mr. March, so I suppose he was the attraction. The excellent papa labored under the delusion that he was, and revelled in long discussions with the kindred spirit till a chance remark of his more observing grandson suddenly enlightened him. Mr. Bayer came in one evening to pause in the threshold of the study, astonished by the spectacle that met his eye. Prone upon the floor lay Mr. March, with his respectable legs in the air, and beside him, likewise prone, was Demi, trying to imitate the attitude with his own short, scarlet-stockinged legs, both grovellers so seriously absorbed that they were unconscious of spectators, till Mr. Bayer laughed his sonorous laugh, and Joe cried out with a scandalized face, "Father, father, here's the professor!" Down went the black legs, and up came the grey head, as the preceptor said with undisturbed dignity, "Good evening, Mr. Bayer. Excuse me for a minute. We are just finishing our lesson. Now, Demi, make the letter and tell its name." "I knows him." And after a few convulsive efforts, the red legs took the shape of a pair of compass, and the intelligent pupil triumphantly shouted, "It's a we, Drampa, it's a we!" "He's a born Weller," laughed Joe, as her parent gathered himself up, and her nephew tried to stand on the head as the only mode of expressing his satisfaction that school was over. "What have you been at today, Boobchen?" asked Mr. Bayer, picking up the gymnast. "Me went to see little Mary." "And what did you do there?" "And what did you there?" "I kissed her," began Demi with artless frankness. "Prut, thou beginnest early. What did the little Mary say to that?" asked Mr. Bayer, continuing to confess the young sinner, who stood upon his knee, exploring the waistcoat pocket. "Oh, she liked it, and she kissed me, and I liked it. Don't little boys like little girls?" added Demi, with his mouth full and an air of bland satisfaction. "You precocious chick! Who put that into your head?" said Joe, enjoying the innocent revelations as much as the professor. "'Tisn't in mine head or in mine mouth," answered the literal Demi, putting out his tongue with a chocolate drop on it, thinking she alluded to confectionery, not ideas. "Thou shouldst have some for the little friend, sweets to the sweet manling," said Mr. Bayer, and Mr. Bayer offered Joe some with a look that made her wonder if chocolate was not the nectar drunk by the gods. Demi also saw the smile, was impressed by it, and artlessly inquired, "Do great boys like great girls, Fessor?" Like young Washington, Mr. Bayer couldn't tell a lie. So he gave the somewhat vague reply that he believed they did, sometimes in a tone that made Mr. March put down his clothes-brush, glance at Joe's retiring face, and then sink into his chair, looking as if the precocious chick had put an idea into his head that was both sweet and sour. Why, Dodo, when she caught him in the china closet half an hour afterward, nearly squeezed the breath out of his little body with a tender embrace, instead of shaking him for being there, and why she followed up this novel performance by the unexpected gift of a big slice of bread and jelly, remained one of the problems over which Demi puzzled his small wits, and was forced to leave unsolved forever. And that is the end of the chapter 22. Chapter 23 is called Under the Umbrella. The first word is while. I do want to show you, I know we haven't been doing the pictures, but I do want to show you this because it is the picture of the Pratt boys dressed up for an early photograph, and it looks like they're reading a book, and it looks like they are like 3 years old or something like that. So,
So 2 boys instead of a boy?
yeah. So it is 2 boys, and presumably it is probably the older daughter's children, because my understanding is that Louisa May Alcott was portraying her own family life growing up when she wrote the book. So we do have 1 reading left, and that will be probably on Thursday, so that we can watch the movie this weekend. And I hope that you're enjoying the story as much as we are. And we will see you again next time. And God bless you, and have a great night. Thanks.